All right, Jesse on Fire, welcome back to the channel. Again, lighting, terrible in this room, okay? Unless I've aged like 100 years in the last like 2 days. The lighting is so bad. It looks so bad. But anyway, okay, so a couple things. Number one, we are going to talk about one of the craziest, awesomest stories I've ever heard about anyone, which is about Khabib. We're going to just get miles out of Khabib, because if we really are not going to be able to talk about this guy for a few years until he comes back, you know, we're going to be talking about him through, you know, vicariously through Islam Makhachev's career, and I am not as bullish on his career as I am on Khabib's. You know, let's get some miles out of it right now, because especially given that he left us with one of the best stories I've ever heard about an MMA fighter, like ever. So we're going to talk about that, right? I've only seen one channel, maybe two channels talk about it, and I don't know, you know, I don't know. Their style is a little different than mine, so hopefully you get something new out of this one. But yeah, someone told me to look into the camera, so I'll do that too. Anyway, all right, so let's talk about this Khabib story, because it's amazing. If you like the content, subscribe and ring the bell. Don't be interrupting me. If you like the content, subscribe and ring the bell. All right, so here's the deal. So I read an interview of Khabib's where he said that in the fight against Justin, he chose to put him in a triangle instead of an armbar because he and his team had talked about it, and they did not think Justin would tap, and he didn't want to hurt Justin in front of his family. He didn't want to break his arm. And I first read that, I was like, and I thought about it, and I read a couple comments on the story, and it was like, and they were like, that's not true. Khabib tried to put him in an armbar at the end of the first round. And I think they were misreading it, okay? It's not like Khabib said, hey, listen, you know, I was going to fight Justin Gaethje, and I was going in there knowing I'm not going to hurt this guy. I'm going to win this fight without hurting Justin. That's not what he was saying, okay? What he was saying was that, and anybody who watches my channel who is an expert at jiu-jitsu, or even like medium level at jiu-jitsu, who has ever rolled with someone who is a beginner, if any jiu-jitsu practitioner who has ever rolled with someone who is vastly inferior skill level or less experienced, because candidly, when it comes to jiu-jitsu, experience is really what it is. It's like, if you've put in the hours, you are going to beat a person who hasn't. Almost, I mean, unless you're talking like 100, like such a tremendous strength difference, that if you're a similar strength to a person and you have 1,000 hours under your belt and this person has 15, you're going to beat them. Like, there's just no question. Like, it's like watching a person who's a newbie at like Call of Duty play someone who like does it professionally. Like, they could play a million times. Literally, they could play a million games and the beginner will never win. Like, will literally never win. That's what it's like with jiu-jitsu. And I think that in the first round, Khabib realized he is so superior to Justin on the ground. As soon as they hit the ground, he's, in his mind, he's like, I can do whatever I want with this guy, which is the exact experience of a jiu-jitsu practitioner who's rolling with someone who is inexperienced. It's not a knock on the inexperienced person. It's not. It's just, again, it's a matter of experience. Now, if you take two people who are, same size, same build, and they both do 500 hours, certainly in most cases, one of them will be better than the other one, right? I mean, that's just the nature of athletics in general and how seriously they take it, etc. But like a person who has 1,000 hours versus a person who has 20, that is never going to go the way of a person who has 20 hours. Like, it's just, jiu-jitsu is it's just not a thing that you can just like pick up, You might be able to figure out, early on, 20 hours in, and maybe not even 20, I don't know. You might have one or two moves that you know how to get to a submission that you figured out. If you're pretty good, you might be able to figure out some slick way to kind of get to a submission. And the person with 1,000 hours is going to have seen that 1,000 times. Okay, so they'll block it, and then they'll just do one of the million moves you've never seen, and you'll end up choked out, right? So I think Khabib realized that was what he was dealing with Justin on the ground. As a matter of fact, I know it because I believe, I don't believe Khabib would lie. Like, he's not why would he lie about that, right? He's telling the truth. And what it means is it's not that he wouldn't have put him in an armbar. It's that in the second round, after rolling around with him in the first round, he knew once it goes to the ground, I can do anything I want with this guy. Literally, I can choose how I want to submit him. And he was talking about in the second round, he could have easily gotten an armbar, and he chose to put him in a triangle instead because he wanted to choke him out because he didn't want to hurt him in front of his family. Because from that position, you saw in the first round, he easily could have put it. I mean, he literally did the exact same thing. He could have easier, actually. It would have been easier for him to put an armbar on Justin, and he chose not to. He chose to put him in a triangle from the top. He knew Justin tried to slam him. He hooked his leg. I mean, again, this, and to be perfectly candid with you, actually, let me finish this thought. So that was 100% Khabib selecting what submission to put Justin in, because he knew they're on the ground. Justin has no chance against him. He's literally like, I'm just going to choose how I want to finish this fight. And he did that because he's an incredible human being, and he's still reeling. Honestly, Justin's with Domination MMA also. Like, they're on the same team. I mean, not the same team, but they have the same manager. They've spent tons of time together. You could tell by how Justin, rolled up to him afterwards and like, you monster. They're like buddies. I mean, at least like, they're buddies, And so he chose not to hurt him, It's incredible. I mean, like, and you think about that, and you think about how he interacted with Gaethje versus, that if Conor and Justin had the same manager, Conor would have been respectful after the fight, but not until the fight was over. He would have been ruthless in the buildup. I mean, maybe not now. I don't know. Maybe my personal opinion is that the Cowboy thing was all a mind game. Like, I think he was so nice to Cowboy on purpose because his gift is sizing people up. And I think with Khabib, he sized up that he didn't have any weaknesses, and so he needed to go as hard as he possibly could, and it still didn't work. And I think with Cowboy, he sized him up, and he was like, if I get this guy mad, he fights better. If I get him soft and liking me, he fights like a pussy, and especially in the first round, and I'll blow him out of there inside 60 seconds, which is exactly what he did. And so him being nice, it'll be very interesting to see how he deals with Dustin in the buildup, assuming that he fights Dustin, because he cracked Dustin mentally the first time. So, we'll see. I mean, he certainly could take that angle, or if as I would imagine, part of why he's doing this is about his image. Maybe he'll be really respectful. Who knows? And he'll let his skills do the talking. Maybe he'll take a page out of Khabib's book and he'll stop doing all that stuff and he'll just let his skills do the talking, because I do think he's the best lightweight now. I don't think there's anyone else who will beat him. I think Conor will run through anyone else, including Tony. And but yeah, I mean, that story about Khabib is just like, it's incredible, man. It's just another thing to just throw on there. I love that story too. Like that's he's there, he's reeling from his dad. He's fighting a guy that he's kind of friends with. He's super respectful of the whole time, but then once the fight starts, he's just in his grill. But then when he has to submit him, he chooses a submission that's not going to hurt him because he doesn't want to hurt him in front of his family. You're like, fuck, man. What a savage, man. What a savage. So, anyway, that is what I've got. Subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell.